Now, one thing that's concerned me that I've been keeping an eye on, I'm sure there's been videos on this before, was what would happen if SHTF happens to all the jails in USA. We have some really bad hombres in jail. I mean, every week I see people go into jail for murder. You know, just the intake in Nashville, from what I was seeing from a small documentary show, has on average 300 people per day go to jail in Nashville. That's a lot of people just in one city, which means thousands every day go to jail. Now, over the years, the jails have gotten so overpacked they can't build them fast enough that they're starting to loosen up on the laws, like smoking marijuana in some states. They're starting to loosen up on it. It's just too costly. It's better to charge for the marijuana and make some money than it is to put them in jail for how much it costs. There's really big money in jails. From what I understand, you get $25 per prisoner that's in jail. Now, here in Tennessee, not far from me, I mean, one of the highest paying jobs here is being a guard at a jail. And we have two different types of jails here within an hour's distance. I mean, we have one that's ran by business, which is not ran by the state. And then we have some that are ran by the state. The food they eat is gross. You can't even stand it. Um, it is quite ridiculous how they're actually treated. What we seem to do in the United States of America is we tend to just throw away the key. We don't rehabilitate here. Bottom line is, you create, I don't know, 3 or 4 murders, you're in jail for life 3 or 4 times, added charges. And I don't say they shouldn't do that. They definitely have to have some thing in place that prevents people from doing that. Some states like Texas, I believe we have it here too in Tennessee, they do the death penalty. Texas is actually one of the highest states for the death penalty. They don't mess around there. But there is no set rules for any state. Like everything in the United States, each state is like its own little country. And what I mean by that is you can have different tax laws in one state compared to another. You could have, it's just ridiculous. It literally is one country after another. And they all set their own rules. When you move from one state to another, and I've moved to over 4 different states, your life changes for a good 5 to 7 years because you are trying to learn everything that goes on with taxes and schools, and it's just unbelievable. There is so much to even research before you do it. You can move to New York and not carry. You move to Tennessee, you don't even need a license anymore. You can just go buy it, walk out, and start open carry, close carry, whatever you want. So if you want to have freedom of rights to carry, look up which state. But if you don't, if you want to live where they have extremely strict laws, move to California or New York. But what would happen to the prisoners in the jail? And I wanted actual proof. I didn't want, some guy getting out of jail and creating some drama, or I wanted real proof on what's going to happen. Is there anything in place to address that problem? Well, if you think about it, it's the same as the states. It would be up to the facility from what I can tell. Every one of them have different rules. And that's all there is to it. Now, they do have lawyers that are fighting for the prisoners. And if there wasn't, I think these people would get treated worse than animals. I really do. In Hurricane Katrina, that is the best I can get to an SHTF situation. So I thought, I'm going to do a bunch of research on that and find out what happened to the prisoners, because they have a big prison there. And then I found the prisoners spent days without power, food, or water. Some were standing in sewage tainted with water up to their chests and their necks. So think about that. What happened in that jail, the guards left, locked them in, and left. There was even reports of them taking their handcuffs off and hooking them on the door in case they got the doors open. Because apparently you could hit those doors hard enough and get them open if you wanted to. So each guard started throwing handcuffs on the doors, and then they left the prisoners in the jail. Basically drowned rats. Now, before you say, well, great, they're prisoners. Who cares? They're all murderers. They're not all murderers. That's the problem. There was 2 gentlemen that were caught in Mardi Gras actually urinating on the street and got thrown in jail. And they were stuck there when this went on. They literally were up to their necks in a jail with feces floating by them for days. No food, no water. They're lucky they lived. Now, years later, they did put up a class action suit, and they did walk away with something like $700,000. But that is nothing, obviously, to our jail system. Money's no object when it comes to putting people in jail. If you look at what it cost them to build those prisons, I mean, they got prisons they built that are like $1 billion. And then they made all kinds of mistakes building it. The more I dug into this, the more I just kept shaking my head. There really is nothing in place. There are no rules. Or nothing at all. Now, maybe there is for prisoners that are murderers that lock down 23 hours and they get 1 hour out. To me, that would just drive me insane. But they have prisons like that. Maybe the protocol there is to just walk up and off them and not let them into society. I don't know. Because those type of prisoners, really bad hombres, they would come out and they would gang up right away. They would determine who the alpha male is. And you would have a group to reckon with. I mean, everything from being super nice to you if they came to where you had, a blockade. They would try to talk their way through. I mean, literally, they would sacrifice half their guys just to get through if they wanted to, because to them, they don't care. They're not like you. Their brains don't work right. There is a jail in Arizona, I think I got that right, and the person in charge there has taken the prison and put everybody in tents. Now, you got to understand, it's like 140 degrees there Fahrenheit. What is that, 35, 40 Celsius? I mean, it's hot. And he makes all the prisoners wear pink, and he puts them in tents. And the idea is, well, if the armed forces can stay in tents, so can you guys. And I was like, wow. So to build a new facility would cost, 4, 6, 7, 8 million. But he does it on $100,000 with some fences, barbed wire, and a bunch of tents. The women's side, they run like chain gangs. They literally put chains on their feet, and the women actually march singing to a tune like an army group does. Embarrassment, degrading, they use everything they can to make sure they don't come back. The show I was watching, there was even a woman from Germany that had gained citizenship, and she had said, oh my God, this is horrible compared to Germany. She couldn't believe how she was treated. She's lucky she wasn't in a jail in the Philippines, because those particular jails will blow your mind away. We treat prisoners like gold here, even though we're overpopulated. And in Arizona, that guy's jail, he feeds them the same thing every day. They said it looked like dog food. So, not a good place to be. But believe it or not, there were people that had been there multiple times for drug charges. One guy actually said, I'm a drug addict. And when they let me out of here in another 2 years, I'll do it again. And I'll be back here again. A revolving door. You would think if you were sitting there eating dog food and the same thing every day and suffering in 150 to 140 degree heat, and that would be enough to cure you pretty quick, but it's obviously it. These people have problems. It's just amazing. Some people are never going to get clean when they do drugs. We need to start really looking at people for what it is. If you're never going to get clean from doing drugs and you've been in prison 5, 6, 7 times, especially in that type of environment, we obviously can't let you out. You need to be put in a facility that treats you a lot better and treats you for what you are. You are mental. But in Hurricane Katrina, this is amazing when you search this because it's all hid. It's swept under the rug. They don't want you knowing. The prisoners themselves, in stories I kept reading, said that people died. They were floating by their jail cells. But yet, the officials say there was no death whatsoever. And of course, they say, well, if you're going to believe a bunch of murderers, thieves, and crackheads, I don't know what we can do about you, but there was no such thing. One guy that died was a diabetic, and obviously, if he doesn't get his insulin, he dies of diabetic comatose. So when the officials sit back and say, well, nobody died, it was just really rough, well, that's not true. Because how many people have diabetes in jail? If you got 20 guys with diabetes in jail and they don't get their insulin within a 24-hour period, let's say 1 to 3 days, they're dead. So there had to be death because they weren't taking care of them. They weren't trying to get them out. I mean, heck, we had regular people at the dome dead sitting in wheelchairs. So there's something going on here that is a constant denominator in the United States of America. When something breaks in our system, and our system is so fragile that the government has no clue what they're doing. They have nothing in place to fix anything. That has been proven storm after storm, and even though they try to act like they are, they're not. They're getting better. They're getting better at bringing the power trucks in and getting the power on with different storms. But they really don't have anything in place. If, for example, Russia or some other country did attack the United States, we're not ready for it. We don't have a clue what we're doing. There are other countries out there that have bunkers that they can get into that look after their people. We don't. You want that, you got to build your own like I did. But these guys sat up to their necks. Can you imagine being in a cell? You didn't do nothing really bad. And all of a sudden you're up to your neck in a cell and the water starts rising. You see it hit your ankles, you see it hit your knees, and you're now up to your waist. I mean, what would you be doing? You'd be like a wild animal hitting on that door just to get out. You'd be flipping out. You'd be screaming. You see feces go by. I mean, you're just in a toxic environment that could kill you. Bad enough, you got to watch your back everywhere you go into prison. But now the prison itself is going to take you. They did manage to get out by banging the gates hard enough where they actually got out in the lower level. And then they used bed frames that they tore off with their bare hands and started punching holes through the cinder blocks. They actually got holes to where some of them were jumping out of these holes into the water. Now, from what I could read, they were sitting there with high-power rifles when they jumped out, taking them out. They weren't letting them out. But there are also reports they don't know where some people went. And it's like they've got it all hid. Where they ate by, what do they got there? Crocodiles, alligators? Where they ate by alligators there? I mean, did some escape and never come back, but they didn't want to report it as we've got 40 or 50 people missing? Let's not panic the public. The Hurricane Katrina jails is one heck of a story. And everybody's scared to run it. You see the odd person talk about it. They can't get information. And then when they actually get a hold of the odd person that was in the jail, they're hushed. How can a country just make that all disappear? How's that possible? I don't get it. I'll give you a link in the bottom to a video a guy did on it, so you can actually see pictures of the jail and stuff. But what I see, if something happens with SHTF, and it just seems the same old, there is no standing rules, no standing laws. Basically, it looks like the guards run away like little cowards and just let these guys die. And if they happen to get out, they happen to get out, they happen to live. And with all the jails and all the mass murderers that we have in this country, it would really turn into a bad situation. You definitely wouldn't make it alone. I've got like 4 jails within an hour from me. And the reason they're built is because they make money. I believe they get $25 a prisoner every day. It's big money. People that have big money, the rich people, they go into an area and they build a $3 or $4 million prison, and then they sit back and the state pays them. They don't want to let them out. They want to keep making that money. And it's usually 12, 14, 16 rich guys that get together and build that thing and just really make a bucks off their money. They just get richer. Some states don't allow private prisons, but here in Tennessee we do. But I don't believe there's anything in place where they say they're going to gas them or anything like that if SHTF goes off. All I see is everybody on their own, like it always has been in USA. And in a way, to a prisoner, for somebody that's in jail for a very long period of time, it would be a blessing to them. But to the general public, it's not a blessing to us. Sure, 1 or 2 guys get out, they go crazy with the news because they want people to know, they want people calling on the phones. But when you got a situation like Hurricane Katrina, where they just locked them in the cells and put the handcuffs on the doors and walked out, that's scary because they still got out. So you can look it up. Look up Hurricane Katrina, Katrina prisoners, and you will see a whole bunch of information come up. But because nobody talks about it anymore, it's all swept under the rug. And that's the way with anything here in the U.S. They just, after a while, people just forget, go on with their lives, keep working and try to survive, and forget it. They just don't care. As Americans, we don't care until it happens to us. And then when it happens to us, then we're like, oh shit, what do I do now? So anybody that's foolish enough not to pack some heat, even with this situation occurring, is got to be a fool. Just something to give thoughts to. I'll put a link in the bottom to go check out that video. I'll catch you guys on the next one.